Okay, good morning everyone. Welcome to Friday. Welcome to the last day of class. We finally made it. 12 weeks of online education. Um, yeah, it's been a weird term, right? It's been a different kind of different kind of school experience, I guess. Um, what we'll do today is I just have a little thing prepared. I'll just kind of walk you through. I'll try to tie up this class as best as I can. Again, we didn't quite finish all of the things that I wanted to finish. Um, Obviously, there's lots more to learn and discover, but in a 12-week course on a bunch of different cultures, you just can't dig too deeply into each one. But I'll try to tie it up in some sort of meaningful fashion. Um, Keep in mind that, of course, your final papers are due on Monday the 10th. Um, so you've got just a couple days to wrap them up. Um, I'll be marking next week, and so I'm going to mark those. I'll mark those as soon as I can, because when I'm done, I get to be on holiday, so I am motivated to get them done. And I'll post the grades as soon as they're ready. Um, I think the last day to submit grades is August 17th, so at the very latest you would see them then, but I'm of course going to try and get them done earlier than that, so you can see them. Just so you know, before you can see your final exams, there'll be a little course evaluation or feedback thing. I don't know what they're calling it now. It'll pop up before you can see your final mark, and that's your opportunity to kind of evaluate this course and evaluate me. So it'll ask you a bunch of questions about what you thought about the course and what you thought about the instructor. Um, and you can also type in comments as well. And so you should know that those evaluations are entirely anonymous, so I cannot tell who types what. There's no way for me to know. So you can say what you want and you can be honest. I have feelings, so be nice to me. But at the same time, if you want to say something about this course or about about me or how things went, you can certainly feel free to say it. The marks will have already been submitted, and of course, I'll never know who wrote what. So you can do that as you feel comfortable. Yeah. Okay. So let's. Oh no, we forgot to say hello to everyone. Yikes. I've only done this 50 times, right? Min, good morning to you. Karen's here again. Hello, Karen. Lily's here. Good morning, Lily. Mashid is here. Hello again, Mashid. I'm here. Good morning, Mike. Jenna's here. Good morning, Jenna. Cindy's here. Good morning, Cindy. Pearly. Hello, Pearly. Hello again, KC. Adalbert's here. Good morning, Adalbert. Manish is here. Good morning, Manish. Aliana says good morning. Last day of class. Last day of school. Yay. Woo. Yeah, but you guys have exams. Maybe. Good morning, Aliana. Ying is here. Good morning, Ying. What time do I have to send it to you for the final paper? Sometime on Monday. I think I won't. I guess midnight on Monday if you want to, have it down to the last second. But sometime on Monday, please and thank you. Jimmy's here. Good morning, Jimmy. Chiffon's here. Good morning. And Ella. Hello, Ella. Okay. Let's walk through this as near as we can. Also, I'm sorry if there's some noise in the background. I have my washing machine on. Oops. And Lim is here. Good morning, Lim. Okay, I'll walk you through this as best I can. Okay. So this course was supposed to be about culture and about culture history. And so at the very beginning, we said that cultures were systems of shared beliefs and values and customs and behaviors and physical objects, artifacts that were common to members of a society. So culture is something that people think, it's something that people feel, and it's something that people do together. Culture is a group activity. Um, Culture is something um, that is built from a collective mind. It's something that a society builds for itself, a tool that it builds for itself. And that tool teaches it how to interact with the physical environment and how to understand the physical environment and how to interact with each other. It teaches us how to cooperate with each other um, because again, cooperating is one of the things that makes humans what we are. We're very cooperative creatures most of the time, and that's what makes us so successful, is our ability to work together. Yes, we're very intelligent creatures. um, yes, we have hands that can manipulate objects. Yes, we walk on 2 feet. All of those are very important aspects of who we are, but it's really our ability to work together and to work together in a flexible way um, that's kind of put us in the position that we are as kind of masters of the planet, if you will. Hello, Thika. So we looked at cultures and we kind of broke them down into some broad categories here, and these came from the curriculum document, and I'm not entirely sure if all of them are useful. Some of them certainly are. I think maybe for next time I'll change some of these categories in ways that might be more interesting or more useful, but we're committed to them now, so let's kind of walk through them. We tried to pay attention as we were looking at many of these ancient cultures, trying to look at the connection between culture and the environment. And I think the big connection that we saw between culture and the environment had to do with the development of civilizations in the first place, right? We said that for thousands of years of our human history, since we evolved in Africa roughly 300,000 years ago, humans were foragers. We were hunter-gatherers. But at one point in history, we started to grow our own food, and in doing so, the environment became very important, because most of where we saw these civilizations appearing and where we saw intensive agriculture being practiced was in the floodplains of large river systems, right? Those large river systems provided kind of flat, fertile land for people to grow their crops. It provided water for them to irrigate their crops. Excuse me, sorry. And we saw environments like that, sort of the floodplain of large river systems, be the foundation for the development of a number of ancient cultures. And so we saw that in Mesopotamia with the Sumerians. We saw that in Egypt. We saw it in the Indus River Valley civilization. And we saw it in China with on the Yellow River and the Yangtze. And so in that way, those river systems and the floodplains around them were very important in the development of complex human civilizations. But we also saw that the environment around people helped to shape their beliefs about the supernatural, right? There were, thousands of years ago, there was a lot about the world and the way it worked that people didn't understand. And so they looked to their environment to help them to explain things that they couldn't easily explain, right? And so we saw that humans sort of create supernatural beings, right? So beings that could somehow control or influence the things that people didn't understand. And so all of these animals and plants and forces of nature, like storms or floods, or elements of nature like the sun and the sea and the sky and the river, all of these things are used to allow humans to kind of symbolically narrate their world, right? So they sort of conceptualize a way in which the world works based on a way that makes sense to them. And the way that makes sense to them is based on the physical world that they live in, right? The geography and the plants and animals and the forces of nature that surround them. That's what gives them the kind of materials in order to create explanations for things that they don't understand, right? We saw in some cases, I think, that the environment influenced political organization. And so many of these early societies were ruled by single kings or eventually fell under the control of an empire, because often they were these kind of large, flat, open areas. And those are easy to conquer. You just kind of march your army across them and take them over. But we also saw other places like Greece that were really rocky and mountainous, and it was difficult to take over the whole area, although some people eventually did. But in the ancient world, it was difficult to take over Greece. And so Greece kind of, for much of its ancient history, was a bunch of decentralized city-states. They were all autonomous, they were all unique, and they kind of developed on they developed their own character. In some cases, we saw the environment protected certain civilizations from outside invasion. And so Egypt was like this. It was a river system, but it was surrounded by miles and miles and miles of desert. It's very difficult to attack Egypt in the ancient world. Of course, as time went on and as technology improved, it became easier to attack Egypt. But in its very early history, Egypt was sort of nicely protected by the desert around it. And China similarly. China was kind of way out in the eastern part of Asia. It had and it had certain kind of geographic barriers that allowed Chinese society to develop for thousands of years, pretty much uninterrupted, right? And we saw that China has a long period of dynasties that kind of follow one after the other, but they don't have a long history of foreign invasion. And we also saw that the environment could also help to legitimize political power. And so, again, in places like Egypt or Mesopotamia, or in China, if the environment cooperated with people, so if the rains came at the right time, if the river floods came at the right time, if no earthquakes or landslides happened, that was seen as legitimizing the gods, legitimizing or supporting the political power of the king or the emperor or whoever. So when the environment kind of behaves itself, it looks good on the king or the ruler, and the ruler is able to help legitimize their power based on the environment. And of course, that brings us to politics and power and authority and governance. And so we saw lots of evidence of this throughout the term. At the beginning, we said that human foragers have very simple forms of political leadership. There's really no social hierarchies. There's really no appreciable status differences at all between human foragers. But as agriculture develops, we see society becomes more hierarchical. There's more levels to society. Some people have more status and prestige and resources than others do, right? And we said that in part that comes about because these societies that practice intensive agriculture need to coordinate their efforts in order to survive, right? Those large-scale canals and the maintenance of the canals and grain storage areas and perhaps walls to protect your town or city, all of those require the cooperation of large numbers of people. And so you need somebody to be in charge of that. And early on, those administrative groups that are in charge of coordinating people eventually evolve into a state, right? They evolve into sort of a territorial government in which you have usually a monarchical leader at the top, a king or a priest king or an emperor or whatever. Um, Often we saw in the ancient world that power was seized through military conquest, right? Armies fought it out, and then whoever army won, the leader would become king. And that king would often legitimize his power by connecting himself to the gods, right? So he might imagine himself as a descendant of a god. He might imagine himself as a god on earth, as the Egyptian pharaohs did. Or they might imply that they are favored by the gods. And so we didn't get into this, but our friend from Athens, Pisistratus, the tyrant who originally took over Athens, he sort of convinced the people that he was favored by Athena, and so he gained power in part for that reason. And so in the ancient world, the political leadership and religion are usually always tightly connected. And so if you can get religious figures to support you, that means that the people will support you as well, because people don't like to go against the gods, right? But in other cases, in other cultures, we saw that rulers were justifying their power in other ways, right? We saw some rulers using philosophy and philosophical systems of thought in order to justify their governance. And so we saw Ashoka use elements of Buddhism and Jainism to justify his rule. We saw the Han use Confucianism in order to sort of justify their rule and bind their empire together. We didn't have a chance to talk about this, but Constantine does something very similar with Christianity. Constantine sees Christianity as the glue that can help to hold his empire together. And so he makes Christianity the state religion of the Eastern Empire, which we talked about very briefly yesterday. We didn't have a lot of time to dig into it, but this use of a philosophical or a religious tradition to sort of justify power and to bind a group of people together has been used in a number of different places and for a number of different reasons. We also saw some rulers try to position themselves as father figures, and so they tried to sort of take the normal hierarchy of the family and kind of extend it to the kingdom or the empire. And so rulers like Ashoka or the first Qin emperor, Qin Shi Huang, and Augustus all do this, right? They try to position themselves as the father of the nation in order to get people to do what they say, right? But in other cultures, we have a little less religion and a little more in terms of secular justification for power, right? So again, we have legalism under the Qin. So this is kind of a legal authoritative code that helps to justify power. And again, the Han used Confucianism in the same way. But we also saw other forms of political organization or governance appear as well, right? And so probably most notably in Athens and in the Roman Republic, we see the appearance of democracy, right? A revolutionary governance system where the people have the power, not a single ruler. But I think we've seen, and maybe this is a lesson we should take from the ancient world, is that these systems of democracy, these systems where people have the power, are difficult to hold on to, right? Democratic Athens starts off as a monarchy, right, with a tyrant. They throw the tyrant out. They create a democracy, but their democracy kind of falters and stumbles, and eventually it gets taken over by a single ruler, by Philip of Macedon, and later Alexander. The same thing with the Roman Republic. The Romans threw out their Etruscan king and established a semi-democratic republic, but they found it hard to keep their democracy as well, right? Their democracy was hijacked by individuals who wanted more power and more glory. And eventually the republic falls to the rule of a single emperor. So again, these systems of democracy were very revolutionary, but they're also very fragile, and they can collapse for a number of different reasons. In terms of interactions and exchanges, I think we saw, in terms of trade, we definitely saw that all ancient civilizations were connected to the other civilizations that existed at the same time. We think of globalization as something that, just happened, in the last 10 years or 50 years or 100 years. But in fact, civilizations in the ancient world were trading with each other for thousands and thousands of years. And so even 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, the civilizations in Mesopotamia and in Egypt and the Indus River Valley, they were connected to each other through trade, even though in some cases they were thousands of miles apart. And even though, you had to carry some of these trade items, in carts pulled by horses and camels and such, people were still trading thousands of years ago. And so globalization is not so new. It actually has its roots thousands of years ago. We also saw trade between India and China. Of course, India and China are much closer together than some of those other ancient civilizations. And of course, we talked very briefly about the Silk Road, which connected Asia to China and to the West. And so the Han were able to expand trade on the Silk Road during their dynasty, and that was a huge economic benefit to China at the time, and continued to be throughout history. In terms of conflicts and conflict resolution, we saw lots of war, right? So the ancient world had a lot of warfare in it, right? Sumerian city-states in Mesopotamia were constantly fighting with each other. The Akkadians established their first empire in Mesopotamia, and later would come into conflict with Egypt. We saw the Mauryan Empire fight a war with Alexander, and then come to sort of a peace treaty with Seleucus, who succeeds Alexander. And of course, Alexander himself had just finished waging war against Greece and Egypt and the Persians. And so massive amounts of conflicts are happening in connection with Alexander. We saw that the Greeks were constantly fighting with themselves, and so city-states would go to war with each other very frequently. And of course, the Greeks had to contend with outside forces as well, right? Not just the internal ones. And so the Persians attacked the Greeks a couple of times, and in which case the Greeks had to defend themselves. We saw lots of warfare in China's history as well, right? China had a succession of dynasties all the way through its 4,000-year ancient history. And most of the time, those dynasties change because of the result of civil war, right? And so one dynasty will be seen as weak, and they'll be attacked by one that thinks they're stronger, right? And so you'll get a dynastic change as a result of warfare. And more recently, we saw Rome. Rome was built through conquest, right? The Romans kicked out their Etruscan king. They went to war with the Etruscans to try to maintain their independence and freedom. And after they beat the Etruscans, they kind of just continued to attack and take over their neighbors until they basically become masters of the Mediterranean world, with the world's largest empire by about 300 AD or CE. So lots and lots of warfare in the ancient world. In terms of values and beliefs, I think what we saw was most early cultures were polytheistic, okay? And so they looked out at the universe and they imagined it under the control of many supernatural beings, not just a single one. Many world religions today are monotheistic, right? And so Judaism, Christianity, Islam, those are all monotheistic religions. But in the past, most religions were polytheistic. They had multiple gods, and those gods were responsible for different aspects of the universe, right? The kind of values that people held and the sort of ethical and moral ideas that they had were often tied to religious traditions, but not always. And so, in some cases, what was right and wrong was determined by the gods, right? The gods told you what you should do and what you shouldn't do. But that wasn't true in all cases, right? We saw that groups like the Buddhists and the Jains and the Taoists, I didn't spell Taoists right, sorry about that. The Buddhists and the Jains and the Taoists, they developed moral and ethical codes that were transtheistic, right? So it wasn't about what the gods said, it was the idea that the universe operated in a predictable way that was actually more powerful than the gods. The gods had to exist in this universe as well. And so Buddhists and Jains and Taoists created ideas that were ethical and moral codes that were meant to be in alignment with the way that the universe actually worked, regardless of the gods. And Confucius did something broadly similar, right? Confucius came up with codes of conduct and codes of behavior that was based on Ren, that was based on humanity, right? And so, again, Confucius wasn't looking to the gods for what was right and wrong. He was determining it based on what brought well-being and good to other humans, right? And the Greeks and the Romans were doing some of the same things. They were engaging in philosophical thought, not looking to the gods for moral and ethical answers. They weren't looking to see what the gods thought was right or wrong, but they were trying to figure out how they could rationally and logically determine what things are good and bad and what things are right and wrong. So there was, there's one pattern of looking to the heavens for ethics and morality, but there's another pattern of looking at other humans, right, and trying to figure out what things are good and bad based on how it affects other people. So there's kind of two different approaches that we're seeing in the ancient world. We said that people's beliefs and values, whether they were religious or ethical or moral or cultural, often they were encoded in mythical stories, right? And we said that mythical stories are passed down from generation to generation. They usually contain some aspect of the fantastic, and I don't mean fantastic like super cool. I mean fantastic like supernatural or outside of reality. And they usually contain a lesson or a moral. And this is kind of the most important part, I think. This is what takes a story from just being a story and turns it into myth. Myth is meant to teach the members of a society about their values and beliefs. It's about allowing them to think about what's good and bad and what's right and wrong and what people should do and what people shouldn't do, who people should try to be, who people should not try to be, and what can happen if you break the rules or if you follow the wrong path or if you choose bad values or use bad morals. There's quite a number of cautionary tales in mythology as well. So every culture has these myths and stories are cultural universals. They encode meaning. They're sometimes intimately connected to religion, so they help to support religious beliefs by justifying them in story. But they're also connected to the physical environment. Myths sometimes explain why the physical environment is the way it is. Sometimes they help to contextualize historical events that have happened to a culture or to a society. Sometimes they fulfill the needs of human psychology, right? Sometimes Sometimes we get anxious and scared when we don't understand the world around us, and so myths and stories can help give us answers and help us be brave. Um, and of course, not only is the presence of myth and story a cultural universal, but some of these myths might actually be patterned in a very similar way as well. And so the Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, which we talked about, is probably the most common one. The most common way in which stories are told in very predictable ways. And I encouraged you to imagine that, the hero's journey is so common across multiple cultures and multiple stories because, maybe the hero's journey is sort of metaphorical for our own journey through life, right? Maybe we're all on our own hero's journey and we just have to figure out what it means and figure out what is the thing that we are looking for as the hero of this story. What are we trying to achieve, and how will we know when we have achieved it? Maybe that's one reason why the story works so well. So in sort of the process of doing this course, I'd like us to notice just a couple of broad things, okay? So, number one, of course, geographic and environmental factors have definitely influenced the development of agriculture and of trade in increasingly complex cultures, right? So, the environment and complex cultures are very closely connected. We should also notice that the political and the social and the economic and the religious aspects of cultures are very intimately connected as well, right? And so people's political organization is connected to their society and their social values, right? Economies can help some people to gain political control or to lose political control. Religion, of course, helps society understand why it is the way it is, right? Why certain political and social systems occur and why they are the way they are. But also, religion can be used to legitimize political power or to undermine it in some cases. And finally, we should probably pay attention to the fact that cultures express themselves in very diverse and complex ways, okay? And so we said at the very beginning that cultures are highly symbolic in terms of language, in terms of art, in terms of architecture, in terms of story and myth and religion. Cultures are highly symbolic. And so groups of people express themselves and understand themselves through a very complex web of symbols. And they use these symbols in order to help them understand themselves and help them to understand their world. And similarly, even though we should know, I think, that each human culture is very complex and is very unique, we should remember some commonalities too. One of the commonalities that I like to remember and think about is that humans in the past are genetically identical to humans in the present. And so all the people that we've talked about in ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia and India and China and Greece and Rome, all of these people are just like you and me. They were just living in a different time and in a different place with different technology. But they're the same people as you and me. They have the same emotions as you and me. We should also remember, too, in terms of commonalities, that human cultures, very broadly, they kind of operate in a similar way. They provide humans with the tools to interact with their physical and social environment in the time and place that they live in order to ensure that humans can cooperate and survive. That's the job of what a culture is to give humans a framework to help them cooperate and survive. And so, again, even though every culture is unique and different, the ultimate function of every culture is really the same, and it is that. Um, and lastly, when we kind of explore and we learn about different cultures, that can inform a better understanding of our own. Um, and maybe even more generally, um, since culture is the operating system of humans, right? Because culture is the software that teaches us how to be human. Um, to understand human culture, any human culture, or all human cultures, or our own human culture, is actually to understand what it is to be human in the first place. And I think that's the ultimate goal of anthropology, the ultimate goal of classics, the ultimate goal of this course, and maybe even the ultimate goal of life, if you will. Yeah. So that's what I have. Now, do you have any questions for me? Do you have any questions, statements, things you want to say, things that you're not clear on? Anything you want to say, now is the time, because you won't have another chance in this class anyway. Okay, so Casey says nope, she's good. Okay. Ying says no. Sam's good. Rashid is good. Ella's all good. Aliana's good. Jimmy's okay. Cindy's got no questions. Lim is good. Min's okay. Pearly, we are just nervous. We don't have much to be nervous about because it's all pretty much over. Carmen is good. Dika's good. We are going to miss you. Aw. It's okay. Well, I'm hoping that we'll, well, I don't have to hope. It seems like we'll be in class for September, unless things change, which of course they always could. But it looks like that's what's going to happen. So, at least we'll actually be able to physically see each other in September if you're all around. Okay, so maybe the last thing I'll say before I sign off, because I don't have any more cultural stuff for you. The last thing I'll say, are you teaching in the main campus? Yeah, it seems like, Aliana, it seems like we won't be using North Campus for a while. It's easier for us to control social distancing and to ensure that people can get to and from their classes without being exposed to too many people if we use the main campus. And really no university classes will be taking place in person. So it looks like our secondary program will have all of the third floor, I think, to ourselves on the main campus in fall. Again, that's the plan. Things could always change because this COVID thing is a fluid situation, but that's the plan currently, is that we're going to be in class every day on the main campus, and I think it's the third floor. That plan could change, but that's where we are right now. That's where we are right now. The shirt's really wrinkly. Oops. Okay. I think that's all I have for you. So the last thing I'll say is thank you all very much for being here. I really do enjoy my job, and I'm fortunate in that because lots of people don't like their jobs very much. I do really like my job, and of course I can't do it without any of you. And so thank you all for being here. It was lovely to teach you in this way. It would have been much better if we were in a real class. That would have been much more fun, I think. But I think we did a pretty good job of getting through this. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say. So don't forget, final papers are due on Monday the 10th at some time. If you want me to put a time on it, I'll say midnight on Monday night. But sometime on Monday, please send me your final papers. I will get everything marked and posted as quickly as I am able to. And yeah, I think that's all I have for you. So Cindy says, thank you for teaching us. Thank you for teaching and giving us a lot of knowledge. Cindy, you're very... Oops. Cindy, you're very welcome. I do my best. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you did learn something. Ella says, thank you. You're very welcome, Ella. Thank you to you. Ying, thank you very much. I appreciate you being here, and you're very welcome. Yeah, okay. I think I'm gonna sign off there. That is it. You are officially free of this class. You are officially done. Finish your papers for Monday. I'll get them marked as soon as I can, and maybe if I'm lucky, I'll see you in the fall. So good luck. You're very welcome, Karen. Thank you. Okay, that's it. Rashid, you're welcome. You're welcome, Rashid. Okay, that's it. I'll see you all around. Bye, Aliana. Bye, everyone. Good luck on your final exams. Unless it's bad luck to say good luck and then just forget I said anything. Yeah, and I hope everyone stays safe as well. Wear a mask. Stay away from people. And yeah, that's it. Okay. Bye.